Hi everyone, welcome back to Total War Therapy, and today we're gonna see who are the worst legendary lords to fight with, what is about their campaign's effect and skill trees that make them so powerful, how it is reflected into the battlefield with abilities and improved stats, and finally we're gonna see what are the best tricks to beat them. Anyway, I'm truly sorry I didn't manage to make the video that you're all expecting for. I'm really struggling this summer between the work, the channel and many other stuff, but I promise that it will be out by Friday with a nice surprise. Say that, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy my video, and let's begin. The first worst legendary lord to fight with is definitely Ungrim Ironfist. I lost the count of all my Immortal Empires campaign where I got stuck in the World Edge Mountains because this Ungrim was blocking my way. This legendary lord has no weaknesses, he's unbreakable with plenty of armor even if he's a slayer, and he boosts the slayer that are some of the most powerful units in the game with a lot of weapon strength, and he even gets stronger when he loses his health. First, as you can see, all his campaign effects revolves around boosting the slayers, that are some of the most dangerous units in this game. He can reduce the upkeep, increase the melee attack and the speed, and grant this ability that makes them unable to die when their hit points are greater than 75%. Now let's have a quick look at the skill tree of Ungrim Ironfist and watch carefully, because otherwise you will not believe me. He can boost his slayer units to a so insane level. There is this entire skin line dedicated to them, and it's not over because there is this Dragon Slayer that boosts their bonus versus large, the Demon Slayer that boosts the army overall when they're playing against chaos related faction, and I mean there are other abilities that increase the stats when they're playing against a very specific faction, and then the Slayer Kings that gives them this other ability to the Slayer units that all together with the generic red skill line of for increasing the stats of the slayers can turn these slayers that are already invincible, unbreakable, to this, I mean, immortal warriors that bring destruction everywhere, all at once, yes, like the movie, and yeah, and he can increase, of course, his own stats as well, so yeah, at the end, it's undefeatable. When I say that this legendary lord has no weaknesses, I mean that there is no easy way to deal with him. First, he is this tiny little target, that's why if you try to catch him up with missile attack, it will be very hard, and he has also the missile resistance. If you wanna try to cast a spell on him, he has the spell resistance, so even the magic is a weak solution against him. If you want to cover him up with a bunch of infantry, he will be hard because he has plenty of armor, so units without armor piercing damage deals no damage to him. And if you want to send a character with a lot of weapon strength, Ungrim has a lot of weapon strength too, armor piercing, a lot of melee attack and a lot of melee defense too, so it's very hard to win a duel against him. So how can you do to win a fight against this little dude that is almost indestructible, and as I said, is unbreakable, so you cannot make him rout, and he will even get stronger when he starts to lose health. The only way, in my personal opinion, is to cover him up with infantry with armor piercing damage. In that case, if you use a couple of elite warriors units like that, probably, yeah, it's the only way to manage to defeat him, and you will feel it very satisfying. If you played at least one campaign around the Mountains of Morn after the release of Thrones of Decay, you know the feeling of when you're crossing a valley and you bump into the Tamurkhan, the Maggot Lord army, and the only thing you can do is to go back to your most fortified settlement and wait there for his attack, because your only chance to survive is to play defensively, because this massive lord with all these bonuses and abilities, it's a powerhouse. The most important thing to underline in the campaign's effect of Tamurkhan is that you get access to these very specific mechanics that basically give you the chance to recruit not only these very special legendary heroes, but a lot of units and to get a lot of bonuses for your armies. Now let's have a quick look at the skill tree of Tamurkhan the Maggot Lord. First, when he will reach rank 15, he will get access to this Toad Dragon that will turn this already big ogre into this monstrous war machine, and then it has this very important ability called the Fist of the Maggot Lord that basically works in this way. If Tamurkhan falls in the presence, in the reach of 30 meters of an enemy lord and hero, he will steal his hit points to gain them himself, so he will reborn again, we can say, and then he will get the regeneration that for such a strong legendary lord, believe me, is already very crazy. And there are a lot of abilities that not only boost some particular units like the Plague Ogres, the Toad Dragons and the Warriors of Chaos of Nargol, but they even increase the stats overall of the entire army for the speed, the vigor loss reduction, the upkeep, and yeah, overall is quite crazy. You can get even I can get many things, believe me. There is another magic spells for the campaign that it can be cast in wherever in the map, and yeah, it's so powerful. It's just pure destruction. The problem about Tamurkhan is that he's not only a very good melee specialist, but he's also a very strong support lord. He has a lot of abilities that buff allies and buff enemies nearby, and is riding this enormous Toad Dragon that there are very few front lines that can actually stand his charge, and it will be easy for him to sneak inside your army formation and attack your most vulnerable units. And it has the breath attack, and as I said, a magic that it can cast overall everywhere into the battlefield. So the only actual way to deal with him is to cross your missile attack against him, and you can of course decide if attack him first or at the end of the battle. Of course, I suggest to do it in the very beginning, so once you take him down, it will be easy to take care of the rest of the army, compared to him. But yeah, you have to be very careful, and as I said, you cannot attack him with the monster, because there is almost no monster that can win a fight against him, and you cannot attack him with the character, because as I said, if the character try to make him falling down, then Tamurkhan will steal his hit points. So the only way is missile attacks, and if you don't have missile units, you're just doomed. Let's be honest, when you play against Bretonnia and you declare war to them, you don't get worried that much, but when it's Louen Leoncoeur that declares war to you, you start to get a little anxious, because you know that this knight alone riding a giant flying griffon can solo kill your entire army, and you have to get ready and prepare well if you want to have a chance against him. The greatest disadvantage when you're playing against Louen Leoncoeur is that if you're a faction of Warriors of Chaos, Demons of Chaos, Undead or Greenskins, so basically all the factions that are supposed to fight against him, you will see his army boosted with the leadership and with the melee attack. Now let's have a quick look at the skill tree of Louen Leoncoeur. First, he will get access to Beakis that, as I said, is one of the strongest, is probably the strongest flying griffon of the game, and then all his abilities are very versatile. Some are about the campaign, others are about his melee capabilities and some support abilities, and then he can boost the stats of the Knights of Bretonnia that overall make his army a little more powerful than the generic Bretonnian cavalry focus army. Louen Leoncoeur is truly unstoppable, and you will see, for example, during the siege battles when he will attack directly the wall, that there is no way to stand his presence. He's particularly strong because it's very armored with a lot of speed for being such a huge beast. The melee attack and melee defense are very high, both in foot and with the monster. The weapon strength is armor piercing, the charge bonus is the one of a chariot, and then there are all the the Knight's abilities of Bretonia, and all this package together makes him a very worthy opponent. The only way to fight with him is both a lot of missile attacks, but even in this case he's a flying beast with the missile resistance, so it would be a little harder to catch it if you don't have very accurate missile weapons, or a lot of anti-large infantry. With the cavalry and monster, in this case it can be a little harder because his weapons rank is truly high, but if you use many different infantry with the anti-large bonus that can stand at least a little of his charge, and you manage to block him in one position, in that way, you know, you can hit him very hard and you may have a chance to win the fight. I still remember even back in Total War Warhammer 1 that especially in the early campaign where you were bumping into Vlad Von Carstein, there was no way to defeat him. You could just ignore and wait for your army to get upgraded enough to have a chance, because otherwise this vampire lord with a lot of spells and regeneration that made the fact that he has no mount his best strength, he was just impossible to beat. If Vlad alone, as I said, is already impossible to defeat, the problem here is that he starts his campaign with Isabella von Carstein as a legendary hero, and believe me, this couple of spellcasters, both very good melee combatants, I mean, together are just insane and invincible. Now let's have a quick look at the skill tree of Vlad von Carstein. All his ability, we can say they are very varied. Some are about the campaigns, some are about the support and the boost to his own troops, some are about the magic and some abilities that can make him particularly strong. They're very varied, very versatile, and yeah, you have multiple ways to develop this character, but when you're fighting against him, you can really expect everything. Vlad von Carstein, especially if it's with Isabella von Carstein, you will see that they are so hard to take down, especially in the early campaign when you don't have many elite options to deal with them. First, he is a duelist. He's a duelist with regeneration, immune to psychology, so you cannot make him rout, and even if you try to hit him very hard, he will replenish his hit points, so he will, with a good probability, win the fight. You can try to surround him with a lot of infantry, but he's a spellcaster, so he can cast a lot of spells on your poor infantry. And yeah, many things like that. It's a very strong legendary lord, and yeah, probably in the very beginning you should avoid him. If you have no way to avoid him and you have to fight against him, my suggestion is to use many different heroes and lords. This is the only way I managed to beat him in the very early campaign. You have to take as many lords and heroes as possible, and when he will get surrounded by many characters like that, you have a very high chance to win. He's still a good duelist, but with multiple opponents, you know, even Rocky would go down. If you're playing your Immortal campaigns in Lustria and at some point you have to fight against Yambo the Jade Dragon, you know what is this feeling of looking at your army losing health and you don't know for what arcane reason it's happening. If it's for magic, for some abilities, it's just happening. And I cannot explain why this lord is so strong, even because as a melee combat he's not that powerful, but in some way it's indestructible. Amongst the campaign's effects of the Jade Dragon, there is nothing that much remarkable, but believe me that his personal special mechanics can grant some abilities that, if used correctly, they can make the difference in the battlefield. Now let's have a quick look at the skill tree of Yambo the Jade Dragon. The first very important ability to point out is this, the Emperor Executioner. Basically, if there is a character with his hit points below the 20%, he can just execute them with his very strong ability. And believe me, you have to be scared if you're playing against him and you see that you have a character that with a very little health, you have to keep away, to stay away from him. Then all his abilities are not only about his magic and his melee capabilities, but even about the campaigns overall, the construction, the diplomacy, and I mean the movement and everything actually. He's quite well rounded. He can boost even some of the Jade warriors because of course it's the Jade dragon, and then some of its very specific monsters, so the lions, the Onyx Crowman and the Wuxing War Compass. As you know, Yambo the Jade Dragon has two different forms. The human form, where he can cast spells and is very tanky because he's little with a lot of armor, some elusive melee animations, and then he has the dragon form, where he loses the ability to cast spells but gain the more splash attack, more weapon strength, but is also a huge target in case you want to address it with missile attack. So if it's a dragon, you should probably, yes, address it with a lot of missile attack, crossfire, and in this case it will be particularly easy. But if it's in its human form, it will be quite harder. Likely in the game, it's very rare they turn, these dragons from Grand Cathay, that they turn into the dragon form, but yeah, it's not easier because it will be very tanky. But if you cover him up with a lot of infantry, you hit him very hard with the missile, with the anti-large option, all together you can manage to defeat him, but you have to be careful first of his very strong spells and then of the executioner abilities. So as I said, you have to keep away your characters from him because they will be quite in danger. And yeah, overall you will see many units of yours just losing health for some arcane reasons, so overall try to be very fast. The most ridiculous and exhausting battle I ever played was with my high health elite army with dragons and very high tier warrior against a lone Gor-Rok, but Gor-Rok in some way managed to win the fight after a so long amount of time that I could not believe, because this white lizard is invincible, and when you bump into him in the game, you can just pray. The biggest disadvantage when you're playing against the Gor-Rok, especially in the early campaign, is that he starts his campaign with the control of Lord Croc, that, as you probably know, or maybe you don't know, is one of the strongest spellcaster in the game, and he can increase the unit mass and missile resistance of his entire army. Now let's have a quick look at the skill tree of Gor-Rok. The first things I have to say is that he can boost quite massively his own melee capabilities, from the physical resistance to melee defense, and these are a couple of good ones, because one gives him the attribute of causing terror, and remember that he's just a foot soldier, and then the regeneration, that for a unit that is already so tanky with plenty of armor, the shield, a very good melee defense that can be enhanced to almost 100, probably more than 100. It's just crazy. And then he can boost his own Saurus units with this ability, and even with the Protector of Lastria, that all together with the Prod Warrior, that it's the abilities to all the lords of the Lizardmen. Believe me, he can make his own Saurus units so strong that they look some elite warriors of very high tier, and yeah, even if you see an army with just Saurus, you have to be scared, okay, because it will be impossible to defeat him. Gor-Rok is another legendary lord that is not only a very strong melee specialist, but he's also a very strong support lord. He has a lot of abilities that can buff his allies and buff his enemies, and then it's probably the tankiest tank in the game. It's also shielded. It has the weapon strength with armor piercing damage, even if he has only, one hand free to hit with this mace. That is quite rare actually, even for characters. It's his problem is that is this huge tank that if you try to fight him with no armor piercing units, especially in the early campaign, it would be almost impossible to win. And yeah, this is the only way to deal with this very strong character. You have to you have to recruit a lot of armor piercing units, probably better infantry, and in this case it will be quite easier to destroy him, because yes, it's a strong lord, but if gets surrounded by many units with armor-piercing attack, he will have no way to escape. But yeah, it would be very hard for him to rout, because he has a lot of leadership and he's immune to psychology, so the only way is to make him falling down. And of course, at the end, we got Arbaal the Undefeated. The fact about this lord is not that he has no weaknesses, but that he has all the strengths that together makes it impossible to win against him. He can cause explosion when he got surrounded, he can turn his enemies into cow spawn, and he's so fast with plenty of armor that it's something that doesn't happen in this game, and you need a PhD if you want to find a way to destroy him. In very short, the campaign's effects of Arbaal the Undefeated revolve around this boosting the not demonic units, that means the Warriors of Chaos of Khorne, and he can increase their stats quite remarkably. Now, let's have a quick look at the Arbaal the Undefeated skill tree. The first ability that I have to point out is this Fury of the Blood God, that makes Arbaal able to cast this kind of explosion, and you have to be very careful, because if you are applying some kind of surrounding strategies, like trying to covering him up with your units, he can cause this explosion and makes all your effort just useless, and this ability is rechargeable for infinite times. Then he can get access to the Flesh Hound of Khorne that increase of course the speed without sacrificing its armor, and increase the weapon strength and charge bonus. Then all his ability are about improving him and his Warriors of Chaos, like this couple of ability that put them the expert charge defense for all the units and the unbreakable attribute, and believe me, I mean, it's just making like his army an army of slayers, and I mean, this is crazy. And another important ability is the Eye of Khorne, where he can turn an enemy unit with very low health to a chaos spawn units, so turning them into monsters at your service. With Arbaal the Undefeated, I really believe that the Creative Assembly exaggerated. You cannot surround him with the melee infantry. First because he's very armored, and then because, as I said, he has this explosion ability that is rechargeable for infinite times and will tear them apart. Then it's very fast, so you cannot even take advantage of some moments to catch him with missile attack, because yeah, it's extremely fast with this Flesh Hound. And secondly, it's even a little monster, so if it's in the middle of a melee fight, it will be hard to catch it with your missile units, because they cannot take the aim. And then if it's close to weak units, with little hit points, it can turn them into cow spawn, and you will see these your units that will fight against you. So yeah, it's terrible, and honestly it has also a lot of weapon strength with armor piercing damage, so even characters and monsters, there is no way they can manage to fight him. Now, how can you destroy him? For me, there is no way. You have just to be creative. Sometimes I sacrifice some units so I can have some moments where to shoot at him with armor piercing projectiles, or to charge him with cavalry monster and then send them back. But yeah, you have to be very creative, and you cannot do it in the early fight. You have to wait at the end where all the other core units are destroyed and you're just alone with him.